Raising their voice to each other. I want to make group that said we don't like it. If we agree with this, kind of cool.
Gordy was there and Bob was there, and I had a meeting. So, we're saying we just take 1 or 2 minutes. Just take 2 minutes and we're done. These, but they don't have an hour. Improving minutes. Citizen if not, that's working. All right. The city of Waukesha. We have a meeting every second Tuesday of the month. We go to the meetings, day or nay, here's been now about 15 minutes. It's like Milwaukee. Walking in the office, you can sign for visual drawings. All right. Now, here we are. Smaller. One down in general. Small. River Hills. Tell me about it. I think yes, they used to. Yeah, we went to someone done in front of our house, but kind of straight to look at our driveway.
No problem. No problem. I just want to keep mail stuff. Basically, you know what?
Yeah, it's no time to tell. You know what it is. So it's right here. This is like Netflix.
Good evening, everybody. We're going to start up with the second half of our meeting tonight, the town board meeting, beginning at 7:59 p.m. Ma'am. Folks, could you take your seats? We're going to begin with the next part of our town board meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, could you take your seats? We're beginning with our second half of our town board meeting. Out of respect to everybody else in their time, could you please take your seats? Thank you. Beginning at 7:59 p.m. on 12/14/2017, the Town of Waukesha Town Board meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Supervisor Fisher?
Here.
Supervisor Durr?
Here.
Supervisor Radke?
Here.
Supervisor Wolf?
Here.
Chairman Merrick?
Present. And Madam Clerk, have we met the opens meeting law?
Yes, we have.
And we can begin with citizens' comments. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes out of respect for everybody here. We've got a lot of people in the audience. They all want to be heard. The comments should be not directed at anybody, any one individual, and general to items that are agendized tonight. And with that, good evening.
Good evening. I'm here doing my 30-day check-in. I had a non-compliance and I was supposed to check in.
Are we on the agenda?
No, I just haven't come in.
Okay.
Public.
Okay.
You want to state your name, please?
Clint Albert.
Okay. And where are we at?
I turned in my application for a rezone and the operation permit as of today, so we're making progress.
And what, Madam Clerk, what kind of extension was granted at that time?
We gave him you gave him 120 days with the understanding that every 30 days he would come in and give you a quick
Okay.
update.
Thank you.
So he was moving forward on his rezone and his site plan and plan of operation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Anybody else, or can we close public comments?
Okay, my name is Hans Hummenberger.
Good evening. And your address for the clerk, please?
It's West 277, South 3785, Mary Hill Parkway. Living in our subdivision for the last 40 years, I never heard of any incident of concern about the neighborhood deteriorating or becoming unsafe to live. Our community is without concern of privacy and security. My opinion, to use our subdivision by a gated community is only a segregation of social class and infringement on undeserved value. Merrill Hills Country Club property is so big, they can easily afford to use their own entrance and exit for their planned unit development with a gate at Merrill Hills Road, Highway TT, the actual country club access. Highway TT is serviced by the county highway department, not by the town, and to make it costlier for our town and more dangerous and difficult for each homeowner in our subdivision is unacceptable. Nobody in our subdivision wants to see Sun Valley Trail or Mary Hill Parkway to become a highway for through traffic, which I believe it would be since the gated community is outside of our subdivision, and it would be a through street. The benefits of this gated community would come off our backs by high traffic, making it noisier, unsafe for children to play and ride bicycles, disturbing our daily life where we live. But the opposite would be true for the gated planned unit development. I have nothing against extending Sun Valley Trail as a public street connecting to Highway TT, but not for a gated community that only can get out through our subdivision. If it was an open development like a condominium, it would be acceptable to me. But since it is gated, I believe it's does not belong or is unacceptable to me. The benefits to this gated community would come off of our backs. I read that already. Okay. Currently, there are at least 60 households that use Maryhill Parkway alone that intersects with the dangerous Highway 59. Our streets are limited to 3 tons and not wide enough for heavy traffic. I can appreciate the new development in our town and the so highly praised developer, but I cannot find enough benefits for the planned unit development to become gated. It really is a segregation of social class, but not becoming neighbors of a community. Why would otherwise people choose to live in this gated planned unit development when they will pay long-term high costly homeowner fees? And rules usually don't apply equally to members. Besides footing the bills for potholes and bumpy streets, getting plowed in by the town snowplows, possibly line up by the gate, assuming the gate is in fact guarded, visitors, family, friends, service contractors may be aggravated.
And that's, we're over
Waiting
3
in
minutes, sir.
line at the gate.
Thank you. We're over 3 minutes. We're going to hold comments to 3 minutes out of respect for everybody. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Tom Casper, S37 W27930 Sun Valley Circle. I've sent a note to the supervisors. I'm not going to go through that again. My comments tonight are just 2 things, basically. Water use. I believe that the estimates for water use are very, very underrated, underestimated. I wouldn't put my stamp on it. I believe that the comments from one of the supervisors tonight about the fact that individuals who are concerned about their water levels in their wells should provide for their own monitoring. I disagree with that. I believe that the developer should be encouraged and actually, as a gesture of good neighborliness, provide the water monitoring service for a series of wells for a period of possibly 5 years. One of my very good friends is directly adjacent to the development where 3 wells will be drilled. His well is at 60 feet, and for the past 40 years has provided him with very adequate water. And he's highly concerned about where this water level is going to go. We do understand all of the issues of the hydrologic cycle and septic replenishment and all that. Don't have a problem with it. But individually, being so close to 3 new wells, he's extremely concerned. The other thing I'd like to address is construction traffic. It appears this development is going to be a done deal sooner or later. That's a compressed time frame of 2 years is going to require all the traffic as is presently proposed to come up Sun Valley Trail, down Maryhill Parkway, right turn onto Sun Valley. I would recommend an alternative, and that would be that Oak Knoll be used as a light traffic or light vehicle entrance during construction. I realize it's going to be an emergency entrance at some point, but if we limit the access at that point to vehicles 3 tons and under, that will allow contractor vans, cars belonging to workers and so forth that get into the site that way, the heavy stuff would come up Sun Valley Trail. So by doing that, you're splitting the traffic load and the disruption to the residents. The other thing I think the board should do is to require mud and dirt removal stipulation in the condition so that we don't have to put up with dirt and clods with mud and crap all over our roads. Contractor could be required to sweep the roads every day at some cost, but when you realize that this is a $4 million project or more, I don't think that's unreasonable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Diane Harp, South 37, W27625, Sun Valley Trail.
Good evening.
Since the townspeople were unable to respond to the new site plan for the Legends at the November 10th public hearing, now we have an abbreviated form to do so. Impact on Sun Valley Trail and the adjacent feeder roads will be massive. There will be or have been other people speaking as to the traffic concerns of our own. There needs to be another entrance for construction. Has the town planner and the Legends developer actually studied the road leading off of 59 down Mary Hill Parkway, an incline, a yield sign, a hard right turn, a very narrow road going past 10 residents, and all the construction traffic, semis, dump trucks, and so on? Are our driveways going to be blocked by construction traffic lined up to go in? Is our mail delivery going to be hindered? What about our garbage pickup? You aren't going to have a garbage truck and a bunch of dump trucks going each way and resident traffic. It's not going to fit. Does everybody, do dump truck drivers actually know the incline? They're going to have to stop. They have to yield to Sun Valley traffic left or right. Someone's going to get hurt. I've already had people not yield when you come down. When you're turning, they're supposed to yield. Trucks have to yield. If I'm going down Sun Valley Trail, going to Mary Hill, going to go up to 59, they have to yield. That can't change. Are you going to make it a stop sign? Is a dump truck going to be able to stop? I don't think so. I think the developer and the people that are going to be driving those heavy trucks need to see where they're going to have to access our subdivision. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, Lori and Jim Barton, S37W27336, Genesee Road. First, I want to clarify when exactly Mr. Gaudian was it?
Ma'am, could you please address the board?
I'm sorry. I just want to clarify exactly when this was purchased by Mr. Gaudian because of the paperwork that we have here tonight.
Okay. What you're addressing the board. So give us your.
I just want to explain to our neighbors, because I'm going to take my 3 minutes and then my brother will take his 3 minutes, that this was not what my parents had planned when they sold this land. And I know this is upsetting to a lot of people, but this is more upsetting to my family because we know what our dad's wishes were. So I will turn it over to my brother.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm one of the children of Gerald Barton. I'm also the personal representative for the estate of Gerald Barton, and I think I'm now here in that capacity. There may be some serious legal questions as to whether this development can in fact proceed. I located the option to purchase when my father sold it to Merrill Hills Country Club, and I'd like to read in it's a 4-page document with an attached plat of survey. I'd like to read in the last 2 paragraphs. Before I do it, I would just want to, so that everybody's clear, in these 2 paragraphs, buyer refers to Merrill Hills Country Club and seller refers to my dad. This option to purchase and right of first refusal is made on the assumption that the property identified as the option property and the exception property. The option property refers to the development and the exception property is the remaining segment of Barton land south of that. And will be used for a golf course or for some other like purpose. If buyer shall at any time within 20 years after the date of the exercise of the option or after the date of exercising the right of first refusal, determine that either the option property or the exception property shall not be used for such purposes and shall sell the same, then and in such event, seller, his heirs, representatives, successors, or assigns
shall have the exclusive right and option to repurchase any or all of the option or exception property to be sold at the same price that was paid for it and on the same terms and conditions as set forth in the option to purchase or the right of first refusal, depending on which property is involved. Seller and buyer agree to act in good faith and use diligence in completing the terms of this agreement. This agreement binds and inures to the benefit of the parties to this agreement and their heirs, representatives, successors, or assigns. It was signed by Charles Helling, the president of Merrill Hills Country Club, and William Riley, the secretary, in August of 1994. It was notarized, and apparently the land was sold to Mr. Gaudian before that 20-year window was up. My sister had called the Merrill Hills Country Club several times in that period, and they said that she was informed that all the land was only going to be used as a golf course. It was not going to be developed. As the personal representative of the estate, I have a lawyer on retainer. I'm required, I believe, for the estate to go consult with the lawyer as determine what this contract is for. Because it was sold within the 20-year, we have no record. My father saved bills for telephone calls from the lawyers, and we never received any notification we have no record of any notification within that 20-year period that they were going to sell it. So we have, from my understanding of this, we have the first right to purchase it, but they sold it without contacting us in that 20-year window. Because if it was purchased before, August of 1994, that was within the 20-year window.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. No petitioner.
It's public comment, but I own property.
I
guess you can make public comments, but
I understand.
We're not getting into debate.
No, we're not going to get into debate other than the purchase contract is at the title company, and it's a 10-year agreement. And I also have an additional agreement signed by Mr. Barton to clarify that 10-year agreement that was restated in 2006. I can provide both of those. I know this is not that stage.
those are civil issues, and they really don't involve the town board, the plan commission, and anything that we do. So those are civil issues that would have to be addressed in a civil court of law. Anybody else?
My name is Michelle Severson, South 37 West 27570 Windsong Ridge in Waukesha. Just 2 points that one was a question of clarification of verbiage. The information that was put and forwarded to me by the town by email regarding stormwater management practice maintenance agreement for the Legends at Merrill Hills. And in particular in that document, this was around 127th page, 128th page of all the documents that were sent in that order. Exhibit C is marked in those papers saying stormwater practice maintenance. My question was, when we were talking about the wet pond / forebay maintenance, in point number 2, it stated that if there is any kind of leakage from the liner and it would need to be repaired, leakage due to muskrat burrows must require removal of the animals, repair the liner with clay, and embedding wire mesh in the liner to deter further burrowing. My question is, what do they mean by the last statement in that paragraph saying, if the permanent pool cannot sustained at the designed elevation, benching of the safety shelf may be necessary? I'm wondering that because my property is in direct alignment and can be adversely affected by wet pond number 4. And if that pond should have such an issue and they do that, I want to know what it is that means regarding benching the level. They're changing the level in some way, but I'm not familiar with that verbiage, and I'd like clarification, because if that wet pond fails and there's overflow, the other wetland that's next to that is also one right after the other, and the grade of that area travels directly through my backyard and bifurcates my backyard. So I'm concerned about what that means, so I have an understanding. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is on that same form, number 6, it states no grading or filling of the basin or berm other than for sediment removal is allowed unless otherwise approved by the Village of Summit. I'm assuming that we're talking about the town of Waukesha, and this was maybe just pulled verbatim from something they did in the Village of Summit, or that's where the form came from.
I would suppose so.
But I just wanted to bring that to your attention because it seems like everybody's crossing Ts and dotting Is. So thank you so much. Other questions and comments have been already said.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, Shelley Smith, S37W27196 Genesee Road. I want to address at the previous Plan Commission meeting, Mr. Flanagan had asked why this development and the concerns about construction traffic should be any different from any other subdivision development that's occurred. I would say this is different due to public roads being used for a private gated, one of a kind, as stated by Mr. Gaudian, type of community. In regards to the proposed entrance on Sun Valley Trail, this is also ultimately going to mean there will be increased construction traffic on Town Line Road, which runs north and south. Town Line Road was just at the end of the summer repaved and reconstructed. It's done very well. So damage is most definitely going to occur on this newly constructed road that the taxpayers have recently contributed to. Many of us asked that the construction access and eventual main entrance to the road, and ultimately this emergency access also that is proposed on Oak Knoll, that these entrances be taken to the Legends property on Merrill Hills Road and the existing entrance that they already have. It's hard to understand why this would not be possible through permanent easement. And another thing to look at the DOT, apparently there is a letter from the DOT stating that there cannot be an entrance used on Highway 59. But apparently the DOT has recently stated that they can provide an exemption to suspend the rules to allow temporary entrance for construction traffic onto 59. I'm making a formal request for the town to request this exemption and then ultimately ask that this eventually be turned into the emergency access point. It's hard to understand also why this can't be used. I know when equipment was being brought in and initially the land was being cleared, they were already, whoever it was that was coming in to clear the land for this development, trees were being removed. They were using the access on 59. I would also like to point out that viewing the GIS maps and through current survey paperwork done by my family, Oak Knoll is primarily owned by the residents on Oak Knoll Drive, with many, including my family, has ownership to the center line or beyond across to the other side of the road. And once again, I would like to note that Oak Knoll its original use was for a private road only to be used to access for the residents on the road. At some point, the road was supposedly turned over to the town of Waukesha to maintain, but nobody has been able to prove anything as far as when this exchange took place. So I would ask that before this development is approved, that the town will provide proof of the deed transfer of Oak Knoll so the residents can be assured that the town of Waukesha acquired legal jurisdiction over Oak Knoll Road.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Lori Longtime, W271 S3581 Oak Knoll Drive. The first thing I'd like to ask the board to hold over any decision on this proposal, given the many questions, the many moving parts, and the outstanding issues. Additional conditions may be needed. We don't know that yet because there's a lot of stuff we don't know. And again, the issue of too many commissioners absent on the Planning Commission. Number one, the septic perk tests are still ongoing. We don't know the results yet, but they may influence or impact where everything is supposed to go. And it has not, none of those septic perk tests have been submitted to the county. Number two, stormwater runoff. Promises were made in the hearing that we are going to be fixing Schrader's property. How will their water-filled yard be fixed? Are they going to reduce runoff in general or re-engineer the Schrader's yard with the same amount of runoff, which will impact my property? Why haven't the Schraders been contacted? They understand that they're going to be gifted with a re-engineering plan, but nobody has talked to them. Why haven't, where is this in writing? You requiring minute detail of others with much smaller footprint plans than this. You can't just have a blank sheet of paper, call it a plan, and then, vote on it to approve it and then fill in the details later. That just doesn't make any sense. The county is responsible for this. Let them do their job and review and make recommendations to the developer in town on the stormwater issues. No one knows at this point if the proposed plan will meet the county standards or do the actual job of containing runoff on the site. The county has not seen this plan yet at all. Number 3, emergency access off Oak Knoll Road. If Oak Knoll is not a good access road, it is not a good emergency access road either. Again, echoing Shelley, we would like to see, and I've noticed that you are formally, you focus on the wording of a question. So I'm going to ask a question in such a way that I get the answer that I've been asking for all along. And that is, please provide legal documentation showing that the legal jurisdiction of Oak Knoll is in the town. If you want me to consider this, if you want to consider this my formal official FOIA request, I will do so. FOIA meaning Freedom of Information Act request. This is my request. Will the town, the jurisdiction has not been firmly established, therefore neither the Plan Commission or the town board can approve a plan that includes it. That just doesn't make any sense either.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else?
Beth Roush, West 271, South 3595, Oak Knoll Drive, Waukesha. I do want to say that I have seen my new neighbor who does rent from the golf course, and I do want everyone here to be aware that he does seem to be a very nice man. I cannot say enough about how nice he is. He has not complained yet about my son running onto his driveway or anything. He is absolutely nice. I cannot say enough about him. So I do want everyone to know that. But my big concern is that road. Now that I found out that it is going to be open all the time for emergency vehicles, I would like that it be gated. A closed gate would make me a little safer, especially with the son that I have at my house, knowing that he is going to be taken off into there. I think maybe if he does see a gate down, he might think not open to him to be able to go there, versus if a gate is open, my son is more likely to just travel into there and wander off. So that is a big concern about for me as a parent, having a special needs child who does not understand boundaries, that is closed and gated would make me feel safer. I know not everybody likes the fact that it's going to be a gated community. That's probably the one thing I do like compared to everyone else, is that it is gated, that my son would feel safe. Now I find out that it's going to be open all the time and that he will not be as safe. So that is just my concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Stacy Campbell, W271, South 3661, Oak Knoll Drive. My few concerns that are left remaining is that in years from now, when the Oak Knoll Road Drive is updated, is fixed, is there any way that the road can be open and come back to you guys for a request to make it an access and entrance point instead of just for emergency? I'm concerned that that's what we're being told now, but in the future, that's not how it's going to be. On top of the fact of who does own Oak Knoll, I've told that part of my property is to the center line. I was unaware of this, but I would like to know who really does own it. I also would like the well monitoring systems be put in place, and it would be very kind if it was provided to us. And in light of what the Bartons have just said, I really think that's something that needs to be looked into and addressed as a whole, and not pushed off to them and make it a civil matter, putting them up for thousands and thousands of dollars of legal issues to resolve this, when we should have this resolved here now. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Steve Schmucke, W271S3581 Oak Knoll Drive. First of all, I'd like to just thank the board for continuing to allow the public to speak on issues that are appearing on the agenda. I think it's helps with the transparency of and openness of government. I was at the public hearing. I read into the record and then gave each of the commissioners and staff, as well as the board, a letter, and read that letter into the record at the public hearing, and had a number of questions that I thought would be appropriate for this body to consider. One of them was the stormwater issue, and I have to admit that in a conversation that I had with the developer's engineer at that time and since then, that I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable with the stormwater issue as it pertains to my property, which is to the east of this development. However, I don't want to think that just because my problem might be fixed, that I shouldn't be concerned about the rest of my neighbors. And the neighbors on Sun Valley, I don't think have that same sense of security. So I think it's still incumbent on this board to make sure that the analysis that was done, and we've got a town engineer and a town planner that are supposed to be looking at these issues from our perspective, that they should continue to do that and make sure that the analysis that's being done is adequate, and that the the stormwater issues are not going to affect the neighbors to the west. That's the same. I would hold the same opinion on issues of traffic and safety on Oak Knoll, which, people have said, well, it's been corrected now. It's only an emergency access. What are you worried about? You got everything you wanted. I didn't get everything I wanted, because I have the same concerns for my neighbors on Sun Valley and the other roads in that subdivision. So when we sit here and hear the conditions that have been placed on this development, some of them sound good. I think they're probably going to be adequate, but there are still a lot of other issues that can be addressed, and it's incumbent on this body to make those conditions and to address all of the concerns of all of these people, because that's what you're here for. And I would ask that you think about that before you go ahead and approve this plan. Remember that this is not a guarantee for the developer. You have no obligation whatsoever to approve a conditional use. That's a privilege that you can grant, but it's not a right that the developer has. So you can go back and add additional conditions. I have no illusion that this body will ultimately probably approve the plan or the project, but you can condition it. That's why it's a conditional use. And to do that properly and in protecting all of the neighbors on either side of the development, that's what you should be doing.
Thank you.
So I would ask that you look at this very carefully. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Pete Erlacher. I live at South 37 West 27272 Genesee Road. I unfortunately didn't get a chance to attend the hearing as my work requires travel. And I did have a letter sent to the board regarding some of my concerns, and I haven't had any kind of a response back. And primarily the one that I'm concerned with most is the stormwater. is the runoff, but not with the retention ponds or what they have planned, but with the high groundwater area that's immediately adjacent to my property, right behind it. I've got a mound system back there. Any high groundwater or softening of the soil could cause my mound to collapse. So I want to know what's being done and if that area is being included in the water study. And really, that's about all I got to say, because everything else has been covered pretty good by everybody else here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My name's Ron Hagan, S37W27234 Genesee Road.
Good evening.
Hi. I'm sure Mr. Guadian there is a fine person and is building a good community.
Could you speak into the microphone so that it gets
Nothing
picked up?
against him
Thank you.
personally. I have an abstract here from 1939 and 1950 on some of my land on Oak Knoll Road. I also went to the courthouse and paid cash for some more land as of 4/7/17. Warranty deed and abstract title, they all contain the same thing, that I think a few laws are being broken here in zoning regulations and stipulations by you, the board. Zoning ordinances, districts in this 13.3 of 5, section 13.3.6, real RSE suburban estate district. Okay, what is it? That map says 1.1 acres up. No. Clearly states area, 2 acres. I guess a house is going to have to be bulldozed where that private road is put through. But that doesn't matter. But what does matter, the primary purpose of this district is to provide for large single-family residents on relatively large parcels to enable residents to enjoy some aspects of country living. That means you buy the piece of land and you didn't do that, you're going to put a private road in there? That's against the regulations right there. Something's wrong here. Also, while providing for transitional zone between the less dense RE, which is ours, suburban, and the more dense R1, which is what they're going to build. What happened to that zone? You just broke the plane. You're taking cars right through what this RE suburban estate district is supposed to be all about, what our ancestors built it for. And they were on the board before you folks. And they set all these rules and set all this up to protect us. And I think our town attorney should be protecting us as much as he's protecting you on the town board, because you write him his check. But all these people here pay for it. And our ancestors and everyone in our families have fought through the years in wars and on boards and through regulations and laws to set this up. And it seems to me you're getting ready to pass something for one entity against petitions of everyone on this road, except the one that just bought land, that says, no, don't do this. Please. Say that's your wife, but say that's your mother and father. How would you feel then? Say that's your son and daughter living on the road. How would you feel then? Something's wrong here. This isn't right. There belongs no access on Oak Knoll Road. And I think we got a lot of legal problems coming here with all of this. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, I have to summarize for the board a couple of comments. We want to thank you all for talking and thank you all for coming tonight. I didn't want to say these comments prior to the public speaking because I didn't want anyone to say that I was trying to curtail any of your comments and your First Amendment rights. I want to thank all of those who respected the process and understand the same. For those of you who apparently don't understand the process, I'm going to have to, and more importantly for the town board members, I need to clarify first a few things. First, public comments process is not the same as a public hearing. The public hearing is closed. No new information can be considered. The decision must be based on the information presented at the public hearing. No questions are going to be answered that were raised under public comments. That's not appropriate. That's the public hearing process. Comments on the conditions, for all of those who made comments on the conditions, which many of you did, that's very appropriate. That's fine. You can make comments on proposed conditions. You can request that they deny the matter, like the last gentleman sort of did, but we can't take into consideration anything new, and that's what I need to remind the town board members. So it has to be based on the information presented at the public hearing, not new information presented before or after the public hearing. I just need to clarify that and make an explanation to those of you who wonder why we're not going to answer your questions tonight. That's not the purpose that the legislature set out for public comments. That's the purpose of a public hearing.
Thank you.
So let's move on.
On to number 5, recommendations from the Plan Commission, discussion and possible action. Accessory structure and waiver modification. The petitioner is Russ Gerke. Location is South 47 West 22115 Lonsdale Road. Tax key is WAKT 139399003. And Planner Malarkey. I got it right.
Yeah, so, Mr. Chairman, would you like me to review the entire matter again?
Yes, you have to at least summarize your changes for the commission. This is a different body. And I have no way of knowing if the board members in the back were listening. I assume they weren't.
Sure, so.
I have to make the assumption they weren't, whether they were or not. I don't know that you need to go to a great detail. I'm sure they all have it in front of you.
So the petitioner is requesting approval of 1,728 square foot accessory building on the subject property to a height of 23 foot 10 inches. The Plan Commission made a recommendation for approval to the board, finding that the materials were compatible with the residents in the property. They did not grant the request for a waiver for location for the building, with new evidence that states that the building actually may be set back properly. It may not be in front of the principal building due to the curvature of the road. So the additional condition that was made, they recommended approval to the board. Waiver was not granted, and they recommended to the building inspector that he require that the property be staked out so that the adequate location and setback could be properly clarified, and a decision could be made as to whether or not it actually meets the setback as outlined in the ordinance.
Thank you for the clarification.
I want to know from the two of you who were here, I don't think that was a recommendation to the building inspector.
It was a
I worded it
requirement.
that way first, and they changed it to a requirement that the recommendation to this board is that the building inspector is required.
Okay,
to
I've
get-
made the update.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I just, that's what I originally threw at them, and they said, no, we're going to go the other way.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Does the petitioner wish to address the body? They don't have to, but as a courtesy, we do allow.
We'll get a surveyor to stake it out.
Pardon?
We'll get a surveyor to stake it out.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I will move to accept the recommendation of the Plan Commission.
And a second.
I'll second for discussion.
And discussion.
Yes, my point I look at is I would recommend a survey for you since you're trying to fit it in next year's septic. I don't know the rules. I don't know what your septic requirement is, but like I stated at the last meeting, I was not an objection for the location of the building because it is so far back. So I would support it if it was a recommendation, but I won't support it if it's a requirement.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Regarding the waiver for the setback, is my recollection of our ordinance, and I didn't review it prior to the meeting, was that that's a waiver to be granted by the board, not the planning commission. Do we
That's
know
correct.
that for certain?
Upon recommendation of the Plan Commission.
Not both. They could recommend you deny it, they could recommend you approve it, but you're supposed to ask them for a recommendation.
Specific to the waiver?
Yeah. Yeah, like that's, we've got the code, I think we quoted from the code. The town board, upon receipt of recommendation from the town plan commission, shall make a determination as to whether to include consideration, but not necessarily an affirmative finding of the following factors when deciding whether or not to grant the waiver. But they did not grant the waiver. They did not recommend you grant the waiver.
Understand?
Other questions?
Just a quick clarification. I mean, I actually voted with Supervisor Wolf when we looked at this at a previous meeting to basically not object to it. I guess at this point in time, I think the suggestion to require it to be staked out cleans it up. And if basically the council, and I see nodding heads from the homeowners, and we're just trying to clean it up for everybody involved, I can't imagine why anybody would not vote for the motion if in fact the property owners and their council have consented to do it. So I'm going to vote for it.
Thank you.
And when we're talking about staking out, we're talking about a formal survey with a stake plan for the building location.
A surveyor coming out to stake out the building, not surveying the entire property, yes.
They will locate the building
Understand.
corners with stakes and do it in a manner in which it is compliant with the ordinance. And it's my understanding that that's what the petitioners and council have agreed to do.
Yes.
So then if that location couldn't accommodate the proper setback, they'd have to come back and request the waiver. Is that correct?
Or move it, yes.
Or move it.
Yes.
Okay.
Anything further?
Yeah, if we deny the motion, what happens, Counselor? Do they, obviously they don't get their building, correct?
Well, no, I mean, in a more formal body, and we were trying to, if they made a motion and they withdrew the motion, but the mere fact that they withdrew it, that motion could have failed and they could make another motion. So if this motion fails, it doesn't mean someone can't make another motion. It just means people didn't like the conditions of that motion or, so no, the only option if this motion fails is they don't get their building permit. You could make another motion.
Okay, so the way we're wording it now, if we pass this, they have it staked out and they're fine with their septic, but they're too close to the road, they're not going to get their permit.
Correct, because they didn't get a waiver.
I guess to put it another way, what I think the suggestion is stake it out so it's compliant.
Agreed.
And then we're done.
And they've already agreed to do that, so I don't know why we're even discussing it. Let's move on.
Yeah, but they're agreeing to staking it out. Are you agreeing not to put the building there if it's too close to the road?
Well, they didn't get the waiver, they'd have to come back and ask for a waiver. That was the import of the plan commission's action, was to say, we're not granting a waiver. If you could put it in a legal location, we find the building materials to be acceptable and everything else is fine.
Right.
But you got to put it in a legal location because we're not giving you a waiver. So they're giving them the opportunity of proving by a stakeout that they can put it in a legal location. And I think they've even said you can move it closer to the septic and move it slightly back further. If you can get it in that general area in a legal location, you'll get your building permit. If they can't, then they always have an opportunity coming back and asking for the waiver and explaining, the stakeout didn't work.
Okay,
The planner wasn't right. So pick on them.
Okay, so they can do the same thing though if this fails.
If the motion fails and you don't make another motion, he can always come back, sure.
Let me try it one other way. I think at least the drawing that we were looking ahead here really, unless I didn't see it right, doesn't even have specific dimensions relative to the house. It doesn't have a bearing angle or orientation or anything. I don't think you could give that piece of paper to the surveyor and say, put it here, stake it out here. What we're saying is have them stake it out, come right up to the setback line as close as they can, stake it out so it's appropriate, legitimate, and move forward. They couldn't stake it out from the drawing you got at this point in time anyway, and I don't mean it unkindly. This is a solution to it, and everybody should be happy.
Agreed. So we got a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to B, site plan of operation for Kurt Berger, Bliffert Lumber. Location is S30W24604 Sunset Drive. The tax key is WAKT 133-5988. The recommendation from the Town Plan Commission was for approval. Is there a motion?
I'll move we accept the recommendation of the Plan Commission.
And a second.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to C, site plan of operation for David Lehman. Business is Buddha Haska Temple. Location is South 46 West 23214 Lonsdale Road. Tax key is WAKT 138-8996. Recommendation from the Plan Commission was for approval. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the Plan Commission.
And a second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to D, conditional use for residential plan unit development. Petitioners, Jack Gaudian. Part of the location, part of the southeast quarter section of 18 T6NR 19E. The tax key number is WAKT 136-89-78-003 and WAKT 136-8994. The recommendation from the Plan Commission was for approval. And I want to back up just 1 second and clarify on C, the tax key number was actually WAKT 138-8996-002, just for clarification. Back to D, sorry. The recommendation from the Plan Commission was for approval. Is there a motion?
I will move to accept the recommendation of the Plan Commission.
And a second.
I'll second it.
Discussion.
Could we simply, Mr. Chairman, have planner, not Grabarczyk, planner Malarkey? I think it would be important maybe just to real quickly run through, or at least identify by number what those conditions are. And if you would clarify the issue with regard to the cul-de-sacs, I think that'd be appropriate, just so it's clarified quickly.
Sure. And to be sure, you want them to clarify the additional conditions that were added.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sure. The additional conditions that were added in your staff report are item 4C, construction access and road protection agreement. Item 4D, letter of credit as part of the construction access and road protection agreement. 4F, the land stewardship plan. 4G, easement and exhibit to be recorded with Waukesha County Registry of Deeds for the maintenance of Sun Valley Cul-de-sac Island. 4H, easement for use of common areas 3 and 4 by the town for storage of snow. Number 5, the parking on private roads shall be limited to one side only. Item 6 is item 6 was not approved by, I'm sorry, item 6 was approved by the Plan Commission related to the soft centers in the Sun Valley Trail Circle, and that if they should seek the soft centers, they need approval of the amendment to the language that allows that for them to be able to receive a waiver. However, the Plan Commission did not approve the soft center as part of the conditional use in PUD that was submitted. They can come back at a later time and request that, perhaps the final plat. Item 7 was the installation of the siren activated gate sensors at the Sun Valley Trail entrance and the breakaway bollards at the Oak Knoll Drive emergency access entrance. Item 8, approval of any signage would come at a later date for the appropriate section of the ordinances. Item 12 is the Waukesha County Comprehensive Plan Amendment. Item 13 is the preservation restrictions restrictions related to the INRA per Waukesha County standards. Item 14 is the field delineation of the INRA, which has already happened. Item 15 is the concurrence from DNR regarding the delineation of the wetlands. And item 16 is adherence to the wetland setback regulations as exist in the ordinance as of November 29th. And finally, item 17, the design of the stormwater management system for the 100-year 24-hour storm event.
Thank you. Supervisor Fisher.
Just one a quick thing for Planner Malarkey on 14, and I think you reported it out the same way at the town board meeting here that you did at the Plan Commission meeting. And just for clarification, I think you indicated that the field delineation of the isolated natural resource area, the field delineation has been completed. The concurrence issues are pending, but the field delineation is completed. And just for clarification, that was not completed when this matter was last considered at the town here. Is that correct? So that has been done since then. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, the town requested sewer pack field delineate that. That's since been done. And the results of the field delineation, they're very close to what's shown on the map that was previously presented. It was enlarged slightly to include the wetland area that's just north of the southern cul-de-sac, but does not impact any lots or buildable areas.
So just to be clear, you can represent to us tonight that there's no significant changes in the field delineation from what the assumption was, or they're not significant enough to be of any consequence to any issue.
Correct.
Is that fair?
That's fair.
Thank you. Supervisor Radke.
I have a question. One of the concerns that came up before was in regards to fire protection. And I know you had a staff meeting in regards to some of that. Was that addressed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? We've got a first and a second. If there's no further discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries. On to 6, meeting minutes of November 2nd, 7th, and 9th. Did we have any absences, or can we take these all together? If there's no objection, we'll take them all together.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of November 2nd, November 7th, and November 9th, 2017.
And a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to 7. New business discussion and possible action on the Blifford sign application. Planner Malarkey.
So as part of the submittal, the application submittal for the previous item that was reviewed by the Plan Commission and Board, they're also requesting 6 wall-mounted internally illuminated signs. The signs feature the company name and logo and other information. These signs are displayed on the building. They are considered wall signs per the Town of Waukesha Code of Ordinances. The signs themselves are limited by what's required in the ordinance for wall signs, not project more than 18 inches from the wall, shall not exceed 400 square feet of sign display area in total. Internal illumination, they may be illuminated in accordance with section 13-2-15H of the Waukesha Code of Ordinances. I have found that everything presented for the sign application conforms to the Waukesha ordinances.
Thank you. Any questions for the planner?
Maybe I do.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the application for the sign request from Blifford Lumber.
And a second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to B, Waukesha Bible Church sign application planner. Right, Malarkey.
Good job. The petitioner, Waukesha Bible Church, is requesting to install a sign at the corner of Glendale Road and State Highway 164. There was a previous sign in this location that was, I believe, blown down. The new sign that's proposed is a freestanding sign, will be a height of 14 feet with signage with copy on both sides that will not exceed 40 square feet of copy per side. Will include the name and logo of the church, the address and website on a dark background. The individual lettering and logo of the sign will be internally illuminated with LED bulbs. This will be the only freestanding sign on the parcel. Freestanding signs shall not exceed 25 square feet or 25 feet in height. They should be set back a minimum of 10 feet from all lot lines. Shall not exceed 200 square feet of sign area per side, nor 400 square feet total. And they may be illuminated in accordance with section 13-2-15H. I have found that the freestanding sign as presented meets the provisions of the Town of Waukesha Code of Ordinances. I have, if the Plan Commission and Board should approve this, I have included 5 conditions in my staff report.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I got a question first, I guess, to help me out. I'm sure you can explain this, but I can't understand it. On I guess it's second page of your report, it would be item D. Well, let me ask it this way. Does this sign, does it or does not face adjacent lands which are zoned for use by single family or duplex use?
There are residential uses directly across the street. However, the sign does not face that direction. It faces, it basically faces up and down Highway 164. So does not face the residential across the way.
Okay, because what I was trying to reconcile is under D there. It says signs which are internally illuminated shall not face adjacent lands, blah, blah, blah. And then under staff recommendation 2, it says internal illumination of the sign shall comply with section 13-2-15H, sign illumination nuisance prevention of the town. That was confusing to me. It seemed to be contradictory, but you're saying the explanation is it doesn't face that way, so that's why it's permissible?
Yes, correct.
The sign, the one side faces a B1 and the other side faces an A1.
Okay, so just, and I appreciate that, but that's not clear from
Sure.
the report.
And this has come up in a couple of signs in the past. There's actually language being proposed tonight to allow some leeway in the interpretation of that particular provision in the ordinance.
Sure.
But it's my understanding that this sign, per the current language of the ordinance that's in the books today, it does not face residential
Right.
lands.
And I'm well over that. We'll get that in good course, I guess I'm saying, and maybe even if people, I wouldn't even mind just, I mean, Clerk Treasurer Nicholas typically takes and drops some of these things directly into the minutes. I think it would simply be helpful to say in this instance, the finding of the town planner is that this does not face, because of its orientation, a residential district. I think it'd be a whole lot clearer. Just my suggestion.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I move we accept the sign application for Waukesha Bible Church.
And a second.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to C, ordinance 2017-05, amending 6-2-1, sub J, soft center cul-de-sac.
Could I ask a question, Mr. Chairman? Have they actually filed a petition to do this? Yes. And so this is here for more informational purposes than anything. They filed a request, we have to proceed on that request. It's not debatable. I mean,
They put in the application to have it done.
So we just need to proceed to hearing. I don't think any, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, I don't think any action is needed, because when a person files for an application, we have to proceed and hold the public hearing and send it to plan commission, and we have to go through the process, right? If somebody, we're not the petition, they're the petition.
This is, well, you said hold a public hearing. This is not the zoning ordinance. This is a different ordinance altogether.
Okay. So is the ordinance here tonight for their action?
That was my understanding.
Okay, I apologize. I thought this was yours. That's all. So they've made a request. It's their petition. We have to act.
Very good. So we will.
Planner Malarkey.
So the language that's actually being proposed, this is ordinance 2017-05, an ordinance to amend the Title 6, the Public Works Ordinance, Chapter 2, Construction of Town Highways and Roads, Section 6-2-I-J, cul-de-sacs. Basically, at this point in time, the current ordinance does not allow a soft center. In fact, the last sentence of that section says there shall be no soft center or unpaved islands and cul-de-sacs, and the petitioner is proposing that be stricken and language be added in place that states there shall be no soft center or unpaved islands and cul-de-sacs unless specifically approved by the town board after receiving comments from the fire chief and the developer entering into an agreement in a form satisfactory to the town board with the town for the permanent care and maintenance of the soft center or unpaved island. And that's what's being proposed as an amendment.
Thank you. Just a quick comment. I mean, I appreciate that we're considering it and doing it in this manner, and I'm fully supportive of this. The only question I would have, and this may go to Attorney Macy, so many places in our ordinance, there's reference to approval or action or recommendation by the plan commission, and sometimes the plan commission and the town board, sometimes only town board or whatever. My question would be, I guess, and let's just take even the case in hand that prompts this, the Merrill Hills development, people come back to seek approval. The way this is written, does the plan commission not even consider that for a recommendation or take it outside of the context of this? Somebody, a developer comes through wanting to do something with a soft center or unpaved island. Is that not even considered at the plan commission level for a recommendation or anything? I mean, the way this is written, it's like hands off from the plan commission.
Okay, let me answer the question this way. It would come to the plan commission as part of a preliminary plat or a street plan or a certified survey map. So it would come to the plan commission, but the actual decision of whether or not the soft center would be allowed or not allowed would always be the town board's decision. I believe when we discussed this at the staff meeting, and we felt that roads are the prerogative of the town board, and that regardless of what the plan commission, I mean, it's a little different when you're laying out roads and lots in a preliminary plat. They may have some say on this road should curve or connect or something like that. That's a planning issue. But for the most part, but there's no reason you can't say, you know, you want to refer it to the plan commission.
Okay, and that makes sense. And mine more than anything is because I know and we're not going to clean those out, but inconsistency in the ordinance some places, but it certainly could be presented to the plan commission for their discussion, recommendation, consideration, but the ultimate decision lies with the town board. Is that the essence of it? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I will move to approve ordinance number 2017-05 entitled an ordinance to amend Title 6 Public Works, Chapter 2 Construction of Town Highways and Roads, Section 6-2-1, parens J cul-de-sacs.
And a second.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
So as we're in the point of order where there actually is discussion now, why is it that this doesn't require a public hearing?
It's not zoning or it's not zoning.
It's
Okay.
Chapter 6.
There may be others that, and that was my mistake. When we were going through it with Merrill Hills, for some reason, I kept thinking this was a requirement. and that we couldn't grant a variance, they wouldn't have a hardship, and it wasn't land division where we could grant a waiver, and now it's been clarified, and I
Very good.
apologize for the confusion.
Thank you.
Anything further? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to D, review of draft ordinance 2018, I think that's supposed to be 0-01. Do I have it correct?
No, it's all.
It is O. Oh, my mistake. To amend 13-2-15 sub H.
So this change to the ordinance actually is a change to the zoning code. So this will require a public hearing. This is just for discussion purposes as a first draft. This gets to the idea of the sign illumination and nuisance prevention and the internally illuminated signs we just discussed. There's been a couple of signs that have come up recently that actually face lands that are either zoned or used for residential purposes. And currently our ordinance prohibits internal illumination of signs that face land zoned or used for residential purposes. So we discussed at a staff level how to add some leeway and flexibility for the board to consider these on an individual basis for approval. So the language that's being proposed is essentially this. Signs which are internally illuminated shall not face adjacent lands which are zoned for or used as single family or duplex use. That is the existing language. We basically add on to that says unless approved by the town board after consideration of whether the request would have a substantial adverse effect on adjacent residential property or properties, factors to be considered shall include distance between the proposed sign and the existing or potential future single family or duplex residential uses, screening or buffers between the proposed sign and existing or potential future single family or duplex residential uses, size of the proposed sign, and then whether the adjacent property or properties are currently used for single family or duplex residential or just happen to be zoned for single family and duplex and maybe say farmed. So that's the language and the factors that we have drafted for consideration.
Thank you.
So the question we have is, does the town board want to be the petitioner for this ordinance change?
I think that would be appropriate since it's not just for one sign in the town, but rather potentially could affect many, many signs in the town.
I would agree.
We'll put it on a public hearing for January 11th.
Thank you.
I got one question, Mr. Chairman, and that's when I read this, there's A, B, C, and D, okay? And I'm just not sure to me that D makes much sense if you consider the part of the ordinance that already exists. And then A and B, I think D is just kind of confusing and duplication and so forth. I just think that I mean, the basic part of it says shall not face adjacent lands which are zoned for or used as single family or duplex use. That stays in place. And A, B, and C make a lot of sense to me, but D says whether the adjacent properties are currently used for single family or duplex residential. I don't know what that adds to.
The purpose of that, we were trying to distinguish between an empty lot, the black letter rule that is not changing is whether it's zoned and or used. So you can have an empty lot that's zoned residential that they can't put the sign facing, even though nothing's there at the moment. So what we were trying to distinguish in D is to look to whether it is currently used or a vacant lot. Now, we could have said the opposite, whether the adjacent properties are currently vacant, but we were trying, that was the only point to remind people to think about the distinction.
So if I may, real quick, so consider the possibility where there's no, so the distance between the proposed sign and what's across the street, let's say there's a farmhouse across the street and it's maybe kitty corner, and there's a big farm lot. There's no screening or buffers between the sign and what's across the street. The sign may be small, but the only really differentiating factor is that it's not really used for residential, it's used for ag. And there just happens to be a home that's kitty corner, it's zoned for ag use. So that would be one thing you could hang your hat on and say, well, the business is here, the business is kind of here first before it's developed as residential use. We're going to allow a small sign here to be internally illuminated. That's okay.
And I understand that, but I'll just tell you, I don't personally like that, or it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because if we sit there and say, okay, if there'd be a house there now instead of a farmhouse, okay? Whether zoned residential, but there's a house there instead of a farmhouse, we're saying, okay, the current use of it is really a farm. So we're going to allow that. And then 6 months later, so we say, okay, it's okay in this instance, but 6 months later, somebody comes by and back and subdivides it and put residences in there, then would we say, if we didn't know it was going to be this, we'd never approve it? I mean, we're not going to tell somebody to take the sign down or put up screening.
No,
I just don't think that's something that we should even be considering. We've got flexibility with some of the rest of it, but I just,
But I guess
I'm
what
not
could-
in for that
But
part
what
of
could
it.
happen in that scenario is, first of all, the person developing the lot across the street for residential knows that the sign is there, right? So they're developing that, knowing that that sign exists. If they should choose to, they could buffer that somehow through screening, et cetera. The sign happened to be there first. So it's not like the sign comes after the subdivision is there, where, it's not fair to the residents necessarily that already live there. In this case, the development comes after, they know what they're getting into.
I have a better example. It's used for residential, but it's zoned commercial. It's legal non-conforming. It's the last house on Sunset where everything else has been developed. And we know that at some point the house is going to come down and that's going to be redeveloped as a commercial property because it's legal non-conforming. That's the kind of
Yeah, do
situation
you deny it because it's a house, even though 6 months from now, it's probably going to be a business?
that was more the point. But if you want to strike it, you can strike it. We wanted we thought people should think about it.
Moreover, ultimately, it's a board's, not necessarily this board's decision, but future boards, it's their decision to approve it or not approve it.
Well, I understand
So we
that.
have all the flexibility that we
But my
want.
point is, and I appreciate, because I'm the one that pushed to do this, to put the flexibility into it. I just don't see much what that adds to it, frankly. I mean, if we look at the distance, we look at signing, we look at screening for that type of thing, and there's a possibility that it could be residential. I think when we go to look at those exceptions and approve it, we ought to consider the possibility that it might be a residential use. That's just my point of view.
Very good.
And I think the rest of it's just more cumbersome than it needs to be. And I'm all for the flexibility. I'm completely in support of the concept. I just think that's more than what we need.
Thank you.
We need a motion to initiate the petition to make the change. That just sets it for a public hearing. We'll
Yep.
still take the input. We'll still decide the final wording after the public hearing, but I need a motion to initiate the petition.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to initiate the change.
And a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. E, resolution on policy to request approval of the town board to place objects in the road right of way.
Okay, so at the staff meeting, we've gone through and gave some direction for a couple of property owners concerning what to place in, about placing things in the road right of way. We've got another person that's coming in as well for noncompliance about putting something in the road right of way. I thought what we came up with, or what was decided at the meeting that I sent to the two property owners, you may want to make that a policy. You might not, you could, but I just wanted to formalize it if that is indeed something that you wanted to formalize.
I think this reflects well on some of the issues that we've had, as well as the potential problems that might exist having anything put into the right of way for the town. And it's pretty well thought out, and I would be in favor of it.
A couple of questions, and I know we've had a number of issues discussion on this. I think one of the last times we discussed this with someone who did this, they were directed to go get a permit. I don't see anything, get a permit from the town to go to the building inspector. I don't see anything about that in here. That was the directive they were given. And I'm not necessarily saying that I think it should be in there, but
Yeah.
that's just a bit ago what we told somebody they had to do.
When I put this in this format, my thought was that they had to come to you, the board, to give them the approval to move forward or not with whatever object that they were going into. That at that point, if you gave the approval, then they would have to get the road right of way permit. I can add it if you want me to add that to the
I'm not necessarily
procedures.
asking for that. I'm just trying to get clarification. And the way this is written, it says requires the property owner to do these things. So it says review the original stormwater plan for the property, and the petitioner comes in and says, I did it, I reviewed it. Are we any step ahead, or are they supposed to hire somebody professionally to do this? I mean, I guess a question I'd even have, and maybe Engineer Janelli can help out. If a town resident comes and says, geez, I'd like to do something in the right of way, here's a handful of things that I have to do. Can you help me with 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5? Can I hire you to do that?
So let's add,
just let me just finish. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and somebody comes and says, I want to hire you to do this. Would you know what to do with that, and what would that cost somebody to do all of that?
why don't we add some language that says, number 1, get a survey of the property. No, have a registered surveyor survey the property to check if there are any easements or encroachments. 2, review the original stormwater plan. Have a licensed professional engineer review the original stormwater plan for the property to find out if the property is currently in compliance with the original stormwater plan. 3, state what the current ditch or road right-of-way condition and why the changes or items are needed. Include the grade of the ditch if it matches the original stormwater plan for the property. Change that to have a licensed civil engineer do those things. 4, submit a modified stormwater plan. Have a licensed civil engineer submit a modified stormwater plan. Make any changes to the original stormwater maintenance agreement. Again, a licensed engineer will make changes to the original stormwater agreement, and the other 2 can stay as they are. So we'll just get it out of the way, have a professional be the individual that's going to do that.
Okay, my question is then that certainly clarifies that. Then my question, maybe Engineer Janelli can help us. Somebody comes with that and says, here's my homework assignment. I need your help. What's that going to cost them?
That's not up for our town engineer. They're going to have to hire an engineer to do that.
I didn't say that. I'm saying if he comes to an engineer, not our town engineer, but somebody, a registered civil or professional engineer, if you will, a competitor of yours for the moment, what's somebody going to charge somebody to do those tasks?
That's an open-ended question. I don't think anybody could answer.
No, it is not. I'm asking him
Depends
a
on
question.
the amount of work and the scope of work.
It's not open-ended. I'm
And-
asking him, he has expertise in this area. I'm asking, give me an idea what that might
And
cost.
moreover, why is it relevant?
Are you telling him to refuse to answer my
And
question?
He can answer the question if he wants.
I would like to know. And if you don't have an idea at this point in time, that's fine, but I want to ask it at some point in time. I think it's a big bunch of money.
It may well be. Why is it relevant?
Yeah, I guess to answer Mr. Fisher's question, I would hate to guess. It's obviously going to depend on what we're talking about what is the change we're dealing with? What is the encroachment? That's one issue. You know, you're doing a survey that's, you know,
Cut to the chase. Can you answer the question with any specificity whatsoever?
not really.
Thank you.
You're probably talking several thousands of dollars.
Thousands of dollars. Thank you.
Is there a motion on the resolution? As reworded so that professionals are involved rather than any confusion.
No, I'm not gonna make a motion on it, but I like the intent of it, but I don't know if it's necessary to have a resolution about it. I mean, isn't that in essence what you do when someone comes and has a question about that?
No, we have no policy in place to allow anybody to do anything within the road right away. That's why this has become an issue.
I can't agree to all of this. I mean, we're saying anything at all in the public right of way requires all of this. You get a survey?
Well, here's the problem, Jim. If you don't have
I get
a
the
survey.
problem. I understand that there's issues, but I'm just not sure this is the right way to do it.
Okay, that's fair enough.
May I ask a follow-up question? Just, would this apply if a town resident comes in and says, hey, my ditch is filled up with sand, limestone, chips, silt, boiler slag from when the town resurfaced the road. It doesn't drain anymore. I got cattails in it. I won't even ask the town to do it. I want to do it on my dime, but I want to clean out my ditch. I'll even go out there with a wheelbarrow and a shovel and I'll work hard for the next 3 weekends or something. They have to go through this to clean out their ditch?
No. This is to place items in the roadway. I don't think that would apply. Based on what he said, gentlemen, would you think that that was, or Kathy, you wrote it. They're not placing anything in the ditch.
Okay.
When they're.
So I would agree with that, but then can somebody
I
go
mean,
out?
do you guys agree? They walked in and said, we're here just to clean out debris that came in the ditch.
To me, the right of way is the town's, and to allow someone to go digging around in there willy-nilly, I think is.
But that isn't the question. We have an ordinance that says when you work in the right of way, when you need a permit and you don't need a permit. They may need a permit to remove all that stuff in the ditch. I may agree with you on that. The question was, does this policy pertain to them cleaning out the ditch? And it says on its face, it says approval from the town to place items in the road right of way.
So I would agree with your interpretation, but then the follow-on question to me is, okay, because I think we've got a bigger issue, but ditches that no longer drain. So and if you could say that's not on the agenda for tonight, that's fine if this resolution doesn't apply to it. But at some point in time, then the town is going to have to embrace the basic question of, can the property owner go in there and start reprofiling the ditch or what or not so it doesn't drain? And if so, what do they have to do? I mean, that's a baseline question.
I think it's a good question and one that we do need to address, but it is for a future time. This is something more specific to and was written for issues that we currently have encountered.
But isn't that already addressed in our, if a person would be of such a mind to start digging and reprofiling the ditch, wouldn't they be obstructing or causing to be obstructed the free passage of water in any public gutter, ditch, culvert, swale, or drain? If they reprofile it, then they are in fact obstructing it. And so that's already addressed.
Question, but if they reprofile it and the water flows better, are they still obstructing it?
Not necessarily obstructing
Well,
it,
that
but they're
was my
changing the
point.
stormwater
That was my
management
point. We
plan,
already have
perhaps.
an ordinance.
Right, that's, I'm trying to
And
get
that's
to
my
the
point
point that we have.
to the engineer.
That-
We already have an ordinance that might keep them from going and messing up the ditches.
That is
negative.
not addressed here. What this addresses specifically is placing items in the road right of way.
Right.
That's what this addresses. I don't want to try to fix the problems that are going on in North Korea. I want to talk about placing items in the right of way. That's it.
Okay, let me ask you this question then. Can I fill low spots in my ditch? Then I'm placing something in the ditch. Can I do that? Or do I have to go through all of this
You can
in
come
order
up
to do
with
that?
as many things as your mind will wander.
No, I'm asking a very
The
serious
answer to your
question.
Would be if someone walked in and they would say, yes, you want to place items in the ditch, you need to go through this procedure.
Including dirt. If I want to fill topsoil in my ditch, I have to go through these 5 steps and hire a registered professional engineer
A
to put
layperson-
topsoil in a low spot in my ditch.
A layperson reading this would say, yes,
And is that what we want?
that's a policy decision.
Especially if we're making residents maintain their own ditches, we're telling them they can't fill in a low spot and reseed it to make it look nicer?
Well,
I
here's a
would say that's
question.
exactly what the engineer was warning you about, allowing people to go out and start filling anything and messing up the ditches without somebody supervising. Wasn't that your point?
Well, I'm not saying filling in the ditch.
See, let's start with the basics. At least in the subdivisions and other instances, there was a stormwater management plan. And that ditch is supposed to do certain things based on that plan, right? And there are probably instances and that ditch was designed to be lower in that spot for a reason, to hold a certain amount of water to make the stormwater management plan work. So theoretically, I can't tell you how many people have filled drainage easements and messed them up totally.
No, right.
But they thought they were doing a favor by filling a little dirt. But
Okay,
then
this-
it becomes their house and their accessory structure and their trees and.
But here's
This
the bottom.
might be out of line, but say there's a car accident in front of your road and the car goes in your ditch and, no, you're telling them they can't fix that grass.
I think there's got to be a
I'm
level
gonna
of,
hold them accountable for car in the ditch. If somebody put the car in the ditch without a permit. Or a survey.
Here's a little bit different perspective though. When I try and do this constructively, these things, we sit there and say, review the original storm plan for the property. And maybe this gets down to verbiage. Folks, there's many, many miles of ditches in the town of Waukesha that were built many years ago that never had a storm water management plan, that probably don't even have a grading plan. Somebody couldn't even find such a plan. Doesn't exist for
Yeah.
many of the older ditches in the town. It just doesn't.
add into the proper number if it exists, please.
And if it doesn't exist, then what am I supposed to do?
It doesn't exist. Move on.
So then if there is no storm water plan, and again, most of these are grading plans. If there's no grading plan on file, then I can't do anything in my ditch.
No, you move on to the next item. If there is one, if one exists, review it if it exists. If it doesn't exist, you can't review it. You move on.
Can we add language, and maybe this is a suggestion, that maybe some of this stuff isn't necessary depending on what it is, and to speak to maybe Larry's point about at what point do we deem this stuff necessary? Can we add language if deemed appropriate by?
The clerk had an excellent suggestion, and that was let's toss this back into the lap of staff and bring back some clearer language for us, and we can move on.
Let me just pose one other perhaps roundtable. In other conversations that the board has had, when we're trying to sort out a difficult issue, we've gone down the line and asked a question of each supervisor as to what they think. So I would ask my fellow supervisors and the chairman, do we think we need a policy to address people putting or placing items in the road right of way? I would start that with being one who would answer that yes.
I'll go next, yes. Supervisor Radke,
Yes.
Supervisor Wolf.
It's a wide open question.
It is. So if you think yes, say yes. If you think no, say no. Or if you don't want to answer, say I don't want to answer.
Not always.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Fisher.
I would be inclined to say I need to see the specifics of what that policy would be. Probably not. I mean, I don't know, to go back to this fundamentally, that we should even be encouraging people to mess in the ditch at all.
We
But
certainly
what if
want to
they
do.
do?
We're not encouraging it. The question is, what if they've done it? Where, where are we going from there? Do we just tell them to rip it out?
No, this policy isn't about what if you've done it. This is about telling you what you need to do if you're going to do it. That's altogether different.
What, back to, why don't we throw it back in staff's lap and see if they can get us some clarification? I don't think we need to take any action on that. We can move on if there's no further discussion. On to F, Jeremy Duncan, extension of non-compliance property at South 39 West 22164 Tim Drive. Good evening.
Good evening. Not
Thanks
good morning
for-
this time for my wife. I know she said it was a long time last time, so.
Welcome back then.
Yeah. Unfortunately, for that case, I think it was good I was away. But anyways, the first thing I just want to give we're going to ask for extension. I want to give a little quick comments and then give a couple kind of questions for you guys so we know where we're going. We're all, obviously, this is a topic we're talking about. First of all, clearly, this is a learning experience for me. I didn't know where this is going. I mean, you guys are way beyond me on this, and you guys are still trying to figure this one out. Clearly, if I knew that's where we were at, I wouldn't have took any action at all. I do want to go back to why I even started the action, right? So Belinsky, I bought a house from Belinsky, great house, love it. I saw right away that the ditch looked like a pond in the front, not normal. You can see from the overhead, not a normal, it wasn't part of the drainage plan. It was supposed to keep going down the hill, but there happened to be some kind of spring or something there. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, I don't want to deal with this. Like, I really don't want to have to deal with this. And I know that they can deal with it better. So they said, well, let's call. They called and said, and they got some information about, okay, here's what they're going to try to do. How would this entail? Okay, you need to file, you need to go in and file for the form that I filled out, basically that let you to do some preliminary work on it. And they gave all the details of what we're going to do. So for me, I was at least comfortable that you guys knew like a little bit of what was going to happen. You knew something, right? So I was like, okay, good. And we work out something that makes sense to kind of complete the ditch project, a value for that. Reasonable and it made sense, but it wasn't going to get done in time for any of these hearings. I would still not been buying a house right now, and I'm glad I did. I love it. Go to the neighborhood. Tom here, I've met him. It's been great. But the point is, then I go out and try and go through this process, which clearly there isn't a perfect process. I get that. You guys are going through it. There wasn't a perfect process, and I get it. Good feedback from the engineer. I appreciate the time we got from Chris and kind of him explaining how this works and feeling really good about this. Like, I really felt good about the project because I had it in my house before. I didn't install it, but it was already there. So everything was feeling good about it. Like, I didn't feel any negative. I didn't feel like, I obviously haven't been in this forum where I see how like crazy things can get and how this can kind of go out. And it's not just about me. It's about, thousands of other people that are going to be impacted. But I didn't see that, right? So, but I was feeling really good about it. I talked a little bit with John. I'm not saying everybody told me yes or no. I'm just saying feeling good about it. We're saying we gave you all the document, everything we needed to give you guys. And we're 2 weeks away from finally get to a place where it's a drought, where I could actually get into this ditch and just not regrade it again, just put the ditch underneath so it keeps going. And then I get a note that says 2 weeks later, we don't like ditch work, basically. And I get that, but I didn't get anything like saying like, well, why don't we like ditch work? Why do I spend $600? Like, what's the policy? Like, I feel like, okay, what are you guys telling me? I don't know what you're trying to tell me about it. Like, that doesn't help me. And I just spent $600. Like, and I get it. That's fine, because you're going to hear in a second that $600 is the least of this problem now. But I'm like, $600, like, what did I get from it? And I got good advice from Chris, but it didn't help you guys. It didn't help us get to a point where we can make any decisions on this. So I did that because we were at a point, we did the project, and I convinced Tom, and I probably shouldn't have at the time, but I convinced Tom to do it because it was going to be perfect for our neighborhood to keep things going. And that's why I was glad he did it, because it would keep it going down like it was originally supposed to. I don't even know how plans work, floodwater plans work, but I can tell you, if you look at it, it doesn't change it, and it looks like what it should have been. Like, obviously there was an issue in this lot. So sorry, I know I'm taking time, but I really want to get through it. So the last piece is we did it. We did it the right way. I know everybody's kind of said that we did it the right way. It looks good. As if there was a right way, obviously the right way would have been to work through you guys. But I felt urgency to get it done from the liability standpoint. And my wife talked a little bit about it, but I have liability on that ditch. And if you guys didn't have a process to have it fixed for me, by just telling me like there is not a, like we have problems with ditches, I feel like I still got to resolve it quickly. Like it was always on me when I bought this house. I have to get this fixed quickly. And I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm really, this is a big deal. I see now, right? All the other consequences when you guys make a judgment as one person, it can be taken. I get it legally. I get that now. But that's really where I was coming from. I want to make sure you understood that. And I don't know how to get the liability away. I don't know how that I would have ever got that away in this current circumstances. What you guys just proposed wouldn't have helped me. I wouldn't have had a choice. And now we went out and got the study with it. We went out and asked for a study to be conducted based on an estimate for that. The estimate itself is $4,000 to $5,000 just to get started. He's going to be talking with Chris more. I'm going to get billed. He's going to have to come here a lot because you guys, you're still working through the policy on it. I'm going to basically be funding a very massive project. It's going to be a $10,000 project to fix a very small, basically blip in the ditch. And you're going back to debris in it. It wasn't a lot more than that. They had it staked down. I mean, Blinsky had it staked down through. That's not part of the original plan to have stakes in it. The other thing I would say, as far as other neighbors all around have covered ditches, which those never should have been. I mean, they clearly weren't approved. We have people with rocks in their ditches, and this is the same subdivision where they've cut out and put massive rocks in there. All these things are going to.
Okay, but we don't have a compliance police. We don't wander around looking for these things. If you want to complain about one of your neighbors that has something in there, then we'll send out the building inspector or whoever that needs to do that. But the issue here is the engineer Janelli clearly wrote emails to you, and I know of at least one that was very clear. It said, don't do anything in the ditch because we have to get surveys to find out if you're encroaching on anybody's easements. Find out if you're going to be clipping into a power line or AT&T or Time Warner cable. Find out what the original stormwater management plan is. Now things you say are flowing to where and at what speed and discharging where. Is it part of the original stormwater management plan or is it something different? Has that changed? We don't know. I don't know. And then get a new stormwater management plan to find out where things are going. It was very clear. I said it to you. I know engineer Janelli put it in writing. And this issue came about because he said, don't do anything. And you decided to go and do it. Now we have a problem where we're trying to figure out, well, what do we do to solve that issue? And it's not a matter of just willy-nilly. You can see the discussion goes on for quite some time.
I know.
But
I said
the issue is, when you said we're trying to figure out what's going on, no, we're trying to figure out a solution to allow that sometime in the future. But it was clear that it wasn't allowed at that point.
Yeah, but I guess the point is I had no way to fix my ditch. I was offered no real solution to fix it. Now we came up with recently. You've given some proposals. I went out and figured out that it's going to be, $6,000 to $10,000 depending on where we end. But that was given later on exactly how the process I need to go about.
I guess my solution would have been if you knew you had a ditch problem before you bought the house and Blinsky is who you were buying it from, lay it off on Blinsky, put it as a condition of the home sale, fix my ditch. If the ditch needed fixing, maybe that ditch was designed to be wet. That's a possibility also. Ditches can be designed to hold water, not necessarily always to convey water.
I know. I understand that.
Perhaps that's what that ditch was designed for. I don't know. I didn't look at it.
No, I think the overhead you would see that there was a pond there. I mean,
Okay, but I'm not a stormwater engineer.
I'm not either.
That's why we have to rely on the professionals.
I understand. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, because I'm on the agenda right after, it's the same situation. So if we can do both of us at the same time, is that okay?
I don't take any issue with that.
I think last time
nobody else does.
the same way. So we did go out and get a proposal through Short, Elliott, and Hendrickson, like he was saying. So they had talked with Chris and came up with a plan. Our problem is if we go through with this and pay that money for the plan that they put in place, is it going to get approved or is it still going to get denied at a later date?
I can't speak to that. I haven't seen the plan. I don't know I have no idea what's going on yet. And we still don't have a policy where we have the ability to say, yeah, go ahead and put something in a ditch. And there's reasons behind that.
Okay.
The-
So we need to get an extension for you guys to come up with that policy, or what, I guess what we're asking you for, what would be our next step? Is it just to take the drainage system out? Is that going to correct the whatever issues that are?
I am one of
Brought up
5
there.
board members, and
Yeah, I
my
understand
policy has always been, I believe the policy of the board is extensions are granted for hardships.
What do you mean for hardship? I guess. I don't
A
understand.
hardship. And so the question I'll direct back to you is, what's the hardship? And the hardship
I
is
don't know.
something that
Okay.
you created on your own.
I guess I don't understand what you're, so take it out, or?
What is
Okay,
the
I don't
hardship? What is
understand.
the hardship?
No, the reason.
Why you're asking for an extension, and the policy of the board has been, if we're asking for an extension for a non-compliance issue, we have always looked to what is the hardship. Maybe it would be, we're going to clean up the yard, but it's February and there's 4 trees that are down, been laying on the ground, now they're frozen into the ground. We can't get them up until April when the frost is out of the ground. That's a hardship. But something that's self-inflicted, I wouldn't consider a hardship.
So what I would say is, as soon as we got the advice of what to follow, we immediately went out. So we got that advice end of November-ish, right after Thanksgiving. We immediately went out and talked to these guys, but they can't. And we had it all marked off. But then we have to decide, are we going to be able to spend? We want to spend $8,000 to $10,000, not even knowing what you guys are thinking about this. I mean, so we went out and did the work on it. We wouldn't have finished it. There wasn't going to be time, and we did it as fast as we could. We got on a phone call during work. I mean, there just wasn't going to be enough time. Now, I would say I don't think you want to survey it during the winter. It's not going to work very well. That was some of the advice. They don't really want to touch this too much in the winter now. That wasn't on purpose, but that's kind of where we are. But we did have it all flagged off. So we called them the utilities, and we did all the work we could. But it's just not going to physically get done by the time this meeting was. So that's why we need the extension, in order to, one thing, understand a little bit about how this is going to be handled. And then the other side is just, it's not physically something they can do right now in the cold weather, and well, not the cold weather, but the snow covering the ground and doing surveys.
Anybody else?
My position is to be compliance, it's gotta come up. It was my position at the last board meeting, it's my position now.
Well, it says on the agenda, you're asking for an extension. What's the time frame that you're asking for?
I think you need until it's not frozen, would be one thing probably, I guess. I don't know. I don't know when it's going to be clear enough for these guys to do the work. I mean, it's not that I can't pay these guys. I don't want to pay them, but that's not the issue. I don't know when they're able to do it as far as the weather and anything else.
It's kind of hard for us to grant you an extension, not knowing when that's going to be.
I know I can't predict when it's going to snow or cover the ground. I'm not trying to be.
Can we get a 120-day extension to get us through until April? And then by that point, hopefully the ground will be unfrozen, or snow will be gone, and then we can remove the piping if that's what action we want to take, or we'll have decided by that time and come back to the board with the information from this company on the what they were going to do is do a stormwater maintenance agreement. They're going to do a as-built exhibit of existing conditions with existing easements. They're going to use our original plat survey and show the easements on the original plat survey. And then if there was anything in the easements, they were going to put that, or have their lawyer prepare that to be on our deed.
I made a
And I think they
motion that we
discussed-
grant you an extension for 120 days.
Okay.
Is there a second? Any further discussion?
Just a question if I might, which agenda item are we on? I mean, I know this kind of got put.
That's fine. We're on FNG. and
So
we'll
is
take
it
them
one
together.
motion for both of them?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries.
Would the clerk please clarify the votes on that?
You had 3-2.
And who were they, please?
The two dissenting were Supervisor Durr and Jim.
Thank you.
You
Thank you,
worried
guys.
She wasn't gonna get it for the minutes or what?
What's that?
You worried she wasn't gonna get it for the minutes?
All right, let's move on to H. Peter
Sure, good
Janowiak,
job.
non-compliance property at W230 South 6248 Charles Drive. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm another one of the ditch people.
Thanks for sticking with us.
Yeah, so
I looked at your ditch tonight. What was the intent of what you?
Yeah,
I
so
didn't
I can show
understand
you.
it.
Can I actually? I want to show you another picture.
Sure.
Okay. So. So our driveway has a weird hook at it. And this last drop here,
Mhm.
what we've had happen multiple times, we've had to pull mail trucks out because the way the driveway had a turn at the end and there's a drop. It's about a 5-foot drop. And as you're backing up, you can't see that the driveway turns. So what I wanted to do, my original request was, and you brought up a very valid point, that some ditches are designed to hold water. So we have a lot of water pooling up in our ditch. So my original request, I called Atkins and Rizzi, the contractor, and I wanted to actually fill in put a big pipe in, fill it in. They called the town, said, no, you can't do that. So we called the town engineer. But I called the town back and say, what can I do here?
You should speak at the microphone so that everybody can hear. I'm sorry.
People want to look if you can.
Sure.
So the intent was to try and get the hook out of the driveway. Just that it's about 8 feet that we needed to extend it. And, Chris, is it Chris or Christopher? Chris, I believe it was you or two people. I know two people from the town. When I called, they came out and we were looking at options, and the culvert that we have is already at the limit. So they couldn't actually extend it out about another 8 to 10 feet for clearing it out. So we had discussed some options of going in and backfilling in, and what I was guided in, and maybe I misunderstood this, is that as long as I'm not blocking access to the culvert and they can get in and clean it out, I can go in and do what I need to there. So as long as I'm not impeding the flow. And I've got other pictures. I don't know if Kathy, when I sent the email across, if those other pictures were shared. I actually have a copy of them here. Yeah, the two pictures.
Yeah, they all have.
Okay, so to make sure that we weren't impeding flow, what we did is we put up some retaining walls, and our intent is to actually backfill in. I'm going to cover those with grates to make sure that basically we take the hook out of the driveway. I don't have trucks, delivery trucks, friends that gets piled up with snow. And it happens at least twice a year where I've got to pull somebody out because their truck or their vehicle's hung up on the axles there as they're backing down. So my intention was never to go in and do this work without approval. I've asked for permits for, my garage that I put up, electrical work that we've done. I've always asked for permits. That's why I called the town to say, what can I do here? And the guidance I got was, you can't block access to the ditch, which is why I went through building this out, talking to Nina about getting the right weight grates so that everything's there. I want to try and get some resolution so that I can either that, or I want to go through the hassle of moving our entire culvert over 8 feet.
When you say over, do you mean to the north or to the south?
To the south.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So where that red line is, and if you look at the picture that I gave Chairman Mayor, I just want to get that hook out of the driveway and make it straight. That's.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And do you see do you have the other pictures?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So, and that's why I extended that out that much. We want to backfill that in, have that paved, get that all taken care of. And I have no problems with permits or whatever that has to get done. I just didn't know that, based on the discussion I had, that I actually needed to do a permit.
The issue with what you've got there,
Yep.
and the attorney is absolutely correct, is that you've changed the capacity of the ditch, the direction of it, and the flow of it. And that's the problem. You're not, county stormwater management says you can't change the flow, capacity, direction, or speed at which water discharges. And that's what that's doing.
Okay, so I didn't change so one thing I do want to clarify, the grade of what is in the bottom of the ditcher, and I can show, is the exact same grade that it was.
I understand, but you've got, your intent is to take this, whatever distance that is. That ditch used to be this wide, and now it's this wide. That's the problem. So you're going to automatically increase the speed at which that water discharges, because it used to discharge through an area this wide, and now it's discharging through an area this wide.
It's still going through an area. The limiting factor is that 18-inch pipe that's under my driveway. I'm not changing. It's actually wider than the 18-inch pipe that is going under the driveway. So
But are we going to engineer this tonight, or,
No.
I mean, sir, you can say that, but the water doesn't only come through your culvert. Some water could go into that ditch from the road. Some of that could come from your front yard.
But what he's saying is the limiting or controlling factor on this is the volume of the culvert.
That's not true.
It is absolutely.
No, it's not. None of the water comes off of the road and goes right into the ditch on that side.
Trust me, as an engineer, Attorney Macy, it's absolutely.
yeah,
true.
and I am an engineer, and my nephew is a civil engineer who specializes in water.
Well, that's great.
But no, what I'm asking for is what are my options? What can I do? I'm asking permission on what I can do to either my other option is to go in and make a request to the town to have the culvert moved over. I have, over $2,000 in this project between the grates that I bought, and everything in there. I'm asking the town what my option is here.
Please.
You mentioned you talked to someone. It wasn't me.
Okay.
This is the kind of the first time I'm seeing this, but when I look at this right off the bat, I would, if you don't like the curve in the driveway, I would rip out the driveway and redo it and move the culvert. I guess that's kind of the only.
Well, I guess I'm curious as to who he met with. I met with the town engineer and discussed the widening of the culvert to take the turn out, and they informed me that they could not widen the culvert, so we discussed a few other options. I think we need to nail.
May have been the inspector, perhaps.
Yeah, I know. I can try and dig through my phone, because when I called, I believe I spoke to you, Kathy. You said you have to hire somebody to come out. So there should be a record of the town actually paying an engineer to come out that it was dispatched. I can dig through my phone records and see when it was that I called.
Well, did you receive a town from the bill for engineering services?
No.
Well, if the town would have sent an engineer out to look at it.
They would have charged me. Okay. So I don't know who.
Charged me, and then I would have charged.
Okay. Which again, I don't have a problem with
Understand.
the
but
fee,
I'm
but
trying to
I don't know who
understand
came
who-
out.
I'm
When
trying
did
to
this-
understand who represented the town.
Okay.
When did
It
this take
clearly
place?
wasn't the engineer.
It would have been in the springtime.
Okay.
And somebody came out,
Yeah.
you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was two individuals in a pickup truck.
It doesn't have my property also. We had problems with it. It takes it from the highway department. They didn't represent themselves as engineers. They're the ones that come out and work on the ditches. That's
All right.
what out whatever.
So what did these two non-engineers tell you?
Yeah. So the guidance I got is that as long as I am not, blocking access, I can build. I was going to backfill in some of the area with rocks. My concern was if I backfill that in and the rocks pour in, that's why I built the retaining walls to actually protect access to the existing culvert.
Okay. So what's the request here for us tonight?
What do I do? I mean, the
What do you
letter
do?
I got was tear it down. And again, I would have had no problem filing for a permit if I.
Understood.
All right, I suspect that the DPW came out, so I guess I would make a motion at minimum to give them a 45-day, that gets us on the other side of a meeting a month from now. Extension. My motion would be to give them a 45-day extension.
Supervisor Dorr, would you be, is there a second?
I'll second that.
So can
Is there?
I'm sorry, go
Would
ahead.
you-
Well, I was going to ask is, I mean, for me to go in and move the driveway over 8 feet is, I mean, it's probably going to be $8,000 to $10,000 because they've got to go back in and do that.
Well, but did
so
I,
I guess the other, how do I go in and figure out what I can do there? That's what I
first, we're going to try to sort out what you were told.
Okay.
Because now I think I know who you were told it by.
Okay.
Okay, so I want to try to
Okay.
figure that out first. But I thought I heard you say at the beginning of all of this that really at the beginning your desire was to straighten out. So if you could move your driveway, would you be interested in that?
I'll use the words under duress because I know what the
Well, no,
cost
not
is.
under duress.
Yeah.
I thought I understood that that was something.
My
you were
intention was to
interested in.
lengthen it.
Okay,
That's what I wanted to do. So if I could lengthen it and extend that pipe out and cover it over with the rest of the asphalt, I'll be more than willing. That was what I originally
you
wanted
want to
to
make
do.
it wider at the.
I want to make it wider, just
Okay.
another 8 feet.
Just trying to make sure I understand the
Yep.
picture.
That's my only intention, following that red line to get that hook out so I don't have people get.
We're going to gather some more information.
Good.
I got a first and a second. Is there,
Who was the second, please?
Jim, wasn't it?
Okay.
you.
Okay. If
All
I
in
can
favor?
add one more comment, just for your feedback about the filling in the ditch comment. About, Larry, you mentioned, what if somebody's got to throw some dirt in there if their car gets stuck? John, you mentioned that some ditches are designed to hold water. Our area, as we're mowing the lawn, if it's wet and there's a heavy rain, we've had multiple situations where the lawnmower just kind of slides its way down in the ditch and gets stuck. And I just ask you to consider this as I'm in that situation, a lawnmower gets stuck, it digs a divot. And in that case, if the words aren't worded very carefully, I can't go in and just dump some topsoil in to fill up that divot when the lawnmower got stuck because the ground is so saturated. So I just ask you to consider that. That's something that happens 2-3 times a year.
Thank you.
You can't leave your lawnmower in the ditch either because you need a permit for that to be an object in the ditch.
Well,
Leave
so
your
the
lawn-
problem is when I travel a lot for work and my wife does have to leave the lawnmower in the ditch until I get home and pull it out.
All right, we've got a first and a second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
We'll be in contact.
Motion
Thank you
carries.
very much.
On to.
So I don't
item-
have to do anything. I just want to make sure I can.
Correct, we'll be in contact.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
On to the Moyer Way agreement.
Shall I?
If you'd like, Engineer Janelli, I can touch on this.
Okay.
Please do.
So we have the situation at Moyer Way that we've jumped on a couple of times. I met with Engineer Janelli and, I'm sorry, the gentleman's name?
Stan Sugden, he's our,
Engineer
Company
Janelli
president.
came with a proposal that wasn't satisfactory to the board earlier. You'll recall that this is the end of Moyer Way where we have a bit of a curb going through the middle of the cul-de-sac that never got resolved because originally it was intended for that road to go through. In the meantime, the city bought the land and is turning it into a park, and that will never go through, so we're trying to come to amicable resolution. So we met with Rupert Milkey, Engineer Janelli, and came up with what you see before you, I think accurately summarizes our discussion. To just put it into a few brief bullet points, to resolve this issue, really what the town of Waukesha is going to agree to do is to pay for a cut about 6 feet behind the current curb. The town will remove that curb, fill it with traffic bond and compact it. And that will be the town's responsibility. As part of the road plan next year, we will take care of that cut that will be about 6 feet wide. And it will be replaced, the gutter, will be replaced with binder. at the cost of Rupert and Milky, the surface course at the cost of Rupert and Milky, and then they will engineer and bid it for us at no additional cost to the road program. I think this is a fair solution. That's my opinion. I'm one vote of 5, but I think that summarizes what's in the packet today.
Thank you.
If you have anything to add, sir.
I agree to everything you just said.
Is there a motion
I'd make a motion that we accept this agreement.
and a second?
I'll second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On
The
to-
abstention, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
I abstain, thank you.
One thing behind us. Nicely done, engineer.
On to
Wait,
8.
Did the engineer make that second?
You are hereby notified town board of the town of Waukesha will convene in May upon motion duly made and seconded and acted by a roll call vote required under Wisconsin Stats 1985 sub 1 sub E go into closed session during the course of the meeting. Town board members may attend the closed session. The purpose of the closed session will be as follows: to deliberate or negotiate the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require closed session as authorized under 1985 sub 1 sub E, specifically to discuss an intergovernmental agreement with the town of Vernon. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
And a second.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Durr.
Aye.
Chairman Merrick.
Aye.
Supervisor Radke.
Aye.
Supervisor Wolf.
Aye.
We are in closed session. We'll be out as quickly as possible.
Answer me one question. I'll take your word. No water flows out. It's from the road, right? So
Yep.
water lines into this. Yep. Water comes out of this line into this. Right. He's taking away all of this capacity by cutting it. No longer we holding water. What the point of the cylinder is that when you get out there, you lose the capacity to the structure. The ditch cannot hold as much water. That's okay. It's not, but it's not gonna hold water. Well, how do you know it's going that way or that way? It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. This is, but he has restricted the amount of capacity of this ditch by the structure. This is going forward. He said 18, most of these are 15-inch lines. And what he's done is you gotta get this head and capacity of the cross section. I don't know what we're supposed to do. Nobody's told me. I don't think there's anything on the agenda for me after this. I'm assuming I assume so. I can't speak. I know what is John leaving or is he staying? I don't know. It's part of the. He's leaving. Looks like he's leaving. I'm leaving. I'm saying, are you staying or are you leaving? Are we released? Or are you coming right back?
Oh, yeah. Do we need the attorney? Huh? We love you, but you can leave.
Thank you.
My turn.
You're not on town time anymore.
Merry Christmas, ladies.
Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night, gentlemen. Merry Christmas. Thank you.
is. Yeah. Looking up to my Friday. I'll take my mom and put it in the up and down again. That's exactly where I was. It's like a never ending. Yes. That's why we love our homes. Like that's the one thing we want more than anything is just to be able to go outside. This is living on the book, you know, because but how many people have sisters that live in the children to cards? Oh, no. So college is a hobby. You kind of need something more. You know, it's like what we call cardistry, which is you want to see what you share in cards. It creates the stress and then stress. And there was one the other night. But I called it, oh, you know, all this kind of tricks. So he started his own business, Chris, on the outside. So he's currently 20, maybe 25 an acre. He does, he's often make up and the funny thing is logistically, it's all financial. She works, he has his business. He helps her with her second job. He has a different job that goes into the time he doesn't need. They're working on others. But it's she's got insurance for her employees. But he has that insurance with our companies. He's got the earlier this year and maybe it's going down. So he's on a tight. Oh, yeah. 26. Yeah, that's all. Our oldest is here. He turned 26 in October. So we set up, we looking at the marketplace. He's single, but he has a steady girlfriend, a serious girlfriend, and no folks. All these girls are there. We're lucky to have one of them. One of them died. Nice. Yeah. You know, I don't plus 27, and we have been meeting for a long time. Yeah. Ah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. That is.
And we are back in open session. It is 10:30 exactly. And we are moving on to 9A, operator's license for Stephanie Holian for the Legends at Merrill Hills. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the operator license for Stephanie Wolin at the Legends of Merrill Hills.
And a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Don't we have to do? a
Motion
closed
carries.
session?
On to B, resolution to joining the state health insurance program. This is,
Me.
yes.
It's a joint effort between Kathy and myself.
How is that funded?
There's a constable that, oh, wait. What you have before you in your packet is a resolution that allows us the ability to join the state health insurance program. I think all of you are aware that our current program for health insurance for our town employees, they proposed a almost 16% increase from our current premiums. So in reviewing that, we looked at options, and they provided a few with much lower benefits for a lower increase. And one of the thoughts that came to mind was joining the state health insurance program, which being a municipality allows us to do. However, in order to do that, one of the steps is that we create a resolution that says that, yes, we want to go and do this with the state plan. It's not saying that we're accepted to it, but it is saying that these are the rates that you should be getting, provided you go through underwriting. So right now, the health insurance plan that they're on has been renewed at the 16%. However, if we are accepted in the state program, we can drop the current one, switch to the state program, and have a substantial savings. Did I cover that right?
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
Question, can I ask a question first? What, you see the piece of paperwork in front of us. I mean, they've got, what, 8 different boxes or something like that of different types of plan, PPOs with and without, dental and traditional deductibles and co-insurance and all that kind of stuff. Who checked that first box, and what was the rationale for that? Are we committing to that plan, if you will, at this point in time?
That plan most closely resembled our current plan. And if you look at the long sheet that Kathy gave you, it outlines what the premiums are with our current plan and what the cost would be with the state plan for those same individuals. So for example, if you look at our fire chief, the monthly premium is $1,243 under our current plan. And if you look under the state plan, it would be $742.
A question just for discussion purposes, do we think that it is appropriate, necessary, desirable, or what or not to provide dental insurance? Or do you have a recommendation about that?
Dental insurance is paid 100% by the employee. So under our current plan, there are two individuals that take it and they pay the $69 a month themselves. Under the state plan, it's included. So you can't really take it out, it's just part of it. So obviously, if they were paying it, it's more of a benefit that's now included in the premium. The question that was asked, Kathy, is who chose and why did we choose the traditional HMO standard PPO with dental? And my answer was that most closely resembled our current policy.
Gave us closer to what,
So the coverage is close to what we're doing getting now.
Coverage is actually better.
but it's close to our premium.
So in short, we're getting more coverage for less money. Again, it's just a resolution that's asking them to look at us to approve whether or not we can join the program.
So under the current 1243, 2320, and 444.
Yep.
Was that the town cost
Yes.
or was that the total cost?
That's the total monthly
Total.
cost.
Okay, so that was the total monthly cost. What
Um,
portion of the town was the town paying?
75%.
75? And would we keep that same ratio moving to the state plan? 75, 25?
We haven't determined that yet. It's just a matter of, are we going to be accepted by the state plan? And are we approving that we can do that?
Well, I think this is an easy decision at this point in time. So we'll take a look at it. I would make a motion to approve the resolution to join the state health insurance program, resolution 2017-R-08.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to C, contract with Angus Young for Fire Department Edition.
Brian?
You want me to speak to that?
If-
I chatted
if you will.
with Kathy a bit back on, I just point out a couple of things that I think are kind of a measure of concern. This is, if you look at it, this is, and it's described as a letter of engagement. It's not a contract. Couple of things that do concern me about the way this is presented. If you look at the bottom of the first page, it references terms contract form, B101 owner architect abbreviated agreement 2007 edition. That's a standard AIA form agreement. I think it's appropriate to do that. My personal recommendation would not be to use the abbreviated form. I think the project is of sufficient size to use the, I hesitate to call it the long form, but the standard form. I am concerned if you look at the second paragraph, the last sentence, read aloud, says the risk allocation amount shall be the limit of our professional liability as defined in the risk allocation section of the engagement letter. And if you go into the fine print, what they're looking to do with their professional liability insurance is limit their risk to the value of the contract. I would advise against that, consenting to that limit, but my major concern about this is a letter of engagement, and actually that contract form that I think we asked for is much more comprehensive, and it covers a whole lot of things, I think, for the town's protection. I guess Kathy, I didn't get an update. Did you say we did actually get a copy of something today?
Today I received a modified version.
It's what?
It's a
kind of a modified version.
They modified it? Okay, so we haven't seen that yet. They've got an engagement letter. I mean, they've got the fee proposal. This is what's called a lump sum or stipulated sum. They're proposing a professional fee there and estimated expenses. Again, one of the concerns, even in the longer form, it will define number of site visits during construction and that type of thing.
Is the dollar amount in line, Brian, with what it should be?
I would say, depending on the number of site visits they're proposing to provide during the construction phase, which can be negotiated, I guess I would say it's a little bit higher than I would hope it would be. I don't think it's entirely out of line. It's a little bit higher than I would hope it would be. I thought we asked them, and I think all of us participated in the interview process. If you recall, I think we talked to 3 firms. And I thought, we can go back and look at notes, I thought we posed the question of giving an idea if we were to continue with them, what the approximate estimate of what their services would be. I'm running on memory or recollection, but I thought the response was somewhere in the approximate range of 6% of the anticipated cost of construction. I could be wrong, but that's my recollection.
So is this negotiable? Can we go back to them and say, we think it should be this?
Yes.
Okay.
So what's your anticipated cost of construction?
Well, I think their estimate, if I recall, I believe their estimate for the fire department, part of it was $1 million thereabouts, inclusive of the fees for professional services. I think I'm right on that. So that would basically say that the cost of construction, I think they were estimating, was maybe more in the range of $930 to $940.
Do they ever write these in those kind of terms, that it's a percentage of construction
They do.
costs?
That is not uncommonly done. It used to be more prevalent in the past than it is today. One of the concerns about that typically, or downsides from the owner's perspective, is if somebody says, you mean to tell me the more the project costs, the more the design professional gets paid. And that's absolutely true. One other thing that's occasionally done is to basically actually tie the two together and say X% of the cost of construction not to exceed, and set a fixed ceiling, if you will. That has been done. That's
Right.
certainly something that can be negotiated or discussed.
Brian, do you remember the total square footage of the project, the addition? Just off the top
I
of your
don't
head.
off the top of my head. I wanna say it was somewhere around 4,000 square feet. I don't remember that exactly.
Isn't that here? Each floor will be 2240 square feet. and we'll
Okay,
include
they
a
got
gaming
it there.
kitchen lounge.
So that'd be 4,400, 4,400 to 4,500.
Thank you.
And on the revised one you got today, Kathy, did that change the dollar amount at all, or just some of the wording?
There was so much red print on there.
Okay.
It was like 30%. I did not get that far.
Okay.
Looked at about the second page and saw it was moving the same, so I just stopped.
I will
I
tell
knew we weren't
you,
gonna be able to address it tonight.
Understood.
the standard form thing, I will tell you, and again, I would encourage using the standard, what's called the standard form of owner architect agreement. that is something that has been hammered out over years and years and years between design professionals and building owners, even though it's got the name of a American Institute of Architects on it, and it encourages owners to consult legal counsel. I'm going to tell you, I think that you could pretty much say it sets up a pretty balanced field, and it covers all kinds of considerations. Often design professionals try to modify a lot of the terms in that or strike things. We haven't seen it, but basically to kind of limit their risk or tilt things in their favor. Not uncommonly, owners try to modify them the other way. Those are all negotiable items, but on those things, my sense is they're generally fairest if somebody doesn't try to tip the scales too much to one side or the other. You start to do that, then that can be part of the negotiation thing if you're trying to reallocate risk or whatever, that type of thing. So my hope would be whatever that agreement is, that somebody isn't looking to strike too many of the provisions or modify them to tilt the table.
So we're on kind of a tight timeline to get this resolved, right?
Well, I think so, because we're going to pay a steeper price the further we get into next spring.
Okay, so how do we resolve this? We've got a newer revised proposal from them that we can't make really a call on today. Are we pushing this off till the next meeting? Is that our only recourse, or can we?
I sent you all the new contract. So we do have another meeting on the 20th.
Yeah, so we're looking at many tens of thousands of dollars. I don't think it would be.
I make a motion that we table this until the December 28th meeting.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick question for you. Is it your pleasure and the pleasure of the rest of the board of people? I mean, we can certainly have Attorney Macy look at what's proposed and stuff. Would you like me to look at that and be prepared to speak to it on the 28th?
That'd be great.
Okay, thank you.
The approval of 2018-29 election inspectors. Is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the election inspectors as presented for
And a-
the
and a-
2018-19.
And a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to authorization for payment of the bills.
I'd like to make a motion to pay the Rupert Milky bill in the amount of $11,540.55.
And a second. And Madam Clerk, a roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Radke.
Aye.
Supervisor Wolf.
Aye.
Chairman Merrick.
Aye.
Supervisor Durr.
Aye.
Supervisor
Abstain.
Fisher.
And lastly,
I'd
remainder
like
of
to
the
make a
bills.
motion to pay the remainder of the bills in the amount of $451,094.32.
Fast, Mike.
And a second.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, a roll call vote.
Supervisor Radke.
Aye.
Supervisor Wolf.
Aye.
Chairman Merrick.
Yes.
Supervisor Durr.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
And lastly,
Motion
motion for adjournment. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Good evening, everybody.
Yes, sir.